ever get that feeling? You know, when you're trying to speak English, like you're stuck translating everything in your head, word for word.
Oh, yeah. It's super common. It's like trying to force your brain to switch gears.
Totally. Like you want to think in English, but your brain keeps hitting that translate button.
Right.
So we're going to do a deep dive today
Okay.
into some strategies to actually build like an English brain. It's
Yeah.
based on this YouTube video.
Oh, cool.
It's called How to Build Your English Brain.
Yeah.
5 Methods by Daily Native English.
Okay, yeah.
Have you heard of them?
I have, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, they have some good stuff.
Yeah, and these are not like your typical language learning tips, you know. It's more like mental workouts to like rewire how you think almost.
Okay, interesting. I like that.
Yeah.
Mental workouts.
Okay.
So the first one they talk about is called thought chains, which sounds kind of intense,
Yeah.
but it's actually really simple.
Have you ever noticed how like one word can trigger a whole cascade of like related thoughts?
Yeah, all the time.
Like it's crazy, right? You're like,
Yeah.
whoa, how did I get here?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like it's like a domino effect.
exactly.
You start with one idea and then boom, your mind is like, on to the next thing, on to the next thing.
And the next thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they have this example in the video of starting with the word coffee,
Oh,
which might lead you to like Starbucks,
Right.
and then work, then deadlines, and maybe even like weekend plans, you know?
totally.
It's like you're building this web of connections in your mind,
Yeah.
but you're doing it all in English,
Right.
which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And they emphasize that the key here is the flow, not perfection. Like you're not trying to construct
Right.
these perfect grammatical sentences. You're just letting your brain make those natural leaps.
And that's how native speakers think. We don't plan out every sentence
Yeah.
grammatically. It's more about like the associations that our brains have already built.
That's so interesting. So we're actually mimicking
Right.
native thought patterns by doing this.
Exactly.
So they give you a challenge in the video, they
Right.
say. You start a thought chain with the word food
Okay.
and just see where your mind takes you. Just let those words flow in English.
In English.
You might be surprised at the connections your brain makes.
Yeah, for sure. And what's so fascinating to me is that this technique, it actually taps into something called spreading activation in cognitive science.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like
Tell me more.
each word that you think of activates these related concepts in your brain. And so it strengthens those pathways.
Oh.
So the more that you do these thought chains in English,
yeah.
the more you're actually like physically wiring your brain for that language.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So the more we do it, the easier it becomes for our brains to like jump into English mode.
Exactly.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tip number 2. We're talking about English autopilot. And this one, I think, we've all experienced this.
I think so too.
Have you ever been in a conversation and your mind just goes blank?
Oh, yeah. All the time.
And you can only manage to say like, yeah, or I don't know.
Happens to the best of us.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like that deer in the headlights feeling.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Especially when you're put on the spot
Yeah, yeah.
in a new language.
Exactly. And you're like, I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
But this tip is about training your brain to have those ready-to-go responses. You know, so you don't freeze up.
I like that.
And the video gives examples like, that's interesting.
Good one.
What do you think about that? Or what do you mean by that?
Classic. Yeah.
Right. And these phrases, they're like little life rafts
Yeah.
in a conversation.
Right. They buy you time to process what's being said
Totally.
and then formulate a better response.
And I love this analogy of autopilot.
Yeah.
Because it really is like you're training your brain to like react automatically in English. It's
Right.
like learning to drive.
Yeah.
Like at first you're thinking about every step, right?
Right. Clutch, gas, brake.
Yeah. But with practice, it becomes second nature.
And what's really cool is what's happening in your brain is you're actually creating these strong pathways
Yeah.
for these phrases. The more you use them,
Yeah.
the faster and more effortlessly they come to mind.
Oh, wow.
And that actually frees up your mental energy to focus more on the actual content of the conversation.
Oh, that's so interesting. So we're building those mental reflexes
Right.
with English, which
Okay.
is something I definitely need to work on.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Okay. The next tip might be my favorite. It's called metaphors and analogies.
Ooh, interesting.
And I think it's all about adding a little spice
Okay.
to how you express yourself. You know, it's about like painting those vivid pictures with your words.
Right. Instead of just saying like, it's hot,
Right.
you could say, it feels like I'm in a sauna.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
Or instead of I'm busy, you could try like I'm juggling 10 things at once. And suddenly it's not just conveying information. It's like you're creating an image in the listener's mind, making your English more engaging and memorable.
And I think what's really cool about metaphors and analogies is they help you to think in bigger ideas.
Yeah.
Not just single words. So instead of searching for the exact translation of busy, you're tapping into this concept, this feeling. Yeah.
So you're not just expanding your vocabulary, you're expanding how you think in English.
Exactly.
Which is really cool. They even challenge you in the video to come up with your own metaphor, to describe something in your day. And they're like, don't be afraid to get creative.
I love that.
Right.
I love that.
Right. Now, this next tip is a bit more introspective. It's called Reframe Your Emotions.
Okay.
And it's all about connecting your feelings to the English language.
Interesting.
I know it sounds kind of strange at first, but there's actually a deep connection between language and emotion.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
When you describe your feelings in English, you're actually strengthening that link between those emotions and the language itself.
Okay.
So instead of just feeling frustrated, you might say out loud, you know, I'm frustrated because I can't find my keys or whatever's causing that feeling.
Put it into words.
Yeah, you're putting those feelings into English words.
Yeah.
You're making the language more personally relevant. You're not just learning vocabulary. You're experiencing it.
Right. I like that.
And this actually reminded me of the power of affirmations in English. You know, those positive statements like, I can improve my English every day.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Or, I am confident in my English abilities.
It's powerful stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
And they can actually, those affirmations, when they're repeated regularly, they can change your mindset.
Right.
And boost your confidence, which is essential for language learning.
Yeah. And I think the two really work together well.
Yeah.
Because when you reframe your emotions, you're also creating that positive feedback loop in your mind.
Oh, that's so interesting. It's like you're training your brain to not only think in English, but to feel positive about using it.
Exactly.
Which is amazing.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, ready for the last tip in this section?
I'm ready.
This one's all about action. Simulate English-only situations.
Okay.
Have you ever wished, like, you could just immerse yourself in an English-speaking environment?
Oh, all the time.
Right. It's like the ideal way to learn.
Yeah. But even if you can't physically be in an English-speaking country,
Right.
you can create those situations in your mind.
Exactly.
Which is really cool.
Yeah. The video suggests imagining yourself in everyday scenarios, like ordering food at a restaurant, arguing with a friend, hopefully playfully,
right,
or explaining your job to someone.
Yeah, good ones.
And it's like you're giving yourself a dress rehearsal for real-life conversations.
In your head.
Yeah. But it goes a step further. What about those? Like unexpected situations.
Yeah, what about those?
Like what if you need to ask for directions or your phone suddenly stops working?
Ugh, the worst.
Right. Like how would you handle those in English?
I love that they added that twist.
Right.
It's about preparing yourself for anything, which is such a confidence booster.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Totally.
Yeah.
And they have this really cool suggestion. They're like, when you're watching those short videos online, like, pause for a moment and imagine yourself in that situation.
Oh, that's smart.
Right.
Yeah.
And be like, what would I say? What would I do?
Yeah.
It's like turning passive watching into an active language learning exercise.
It is. It's about finding those opportunities to engage with English in a meaningful way.
Yeah.
Even when you're just relaxing, you know?
Totally. So there you have it. The first 5 tips for building your English brain from Daily Native English. We've covered a lot of ground, from word associations to emotional connections to mental simulations.
It's like a whole workout routine for your English brain.
It is.
Right.
And it's a good one.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. But don't worry, we're not done yet.
We're just getting started.
We'll be back. To unpack these tips even further, stay tuned.
I can't wait. So welcome back. We've been exploring these pretty cool strategies for like rewiring your brain to think in English more naturally.
And I have to admit, even just hearing about these tips, I'm like feeling more motivated to try them out myself because I get stuck in those translation loops all
Mm.
the time.
It's so easy to do. Like our brains, they just want to cling to the familiar.
Yeah.
But sometimes we gotta shake things up a bit.
Yeah, totally. So let's kind of dig a little deeper into some of these techniques and how we can actually apply them. The first one, thought chains. I think this could be a fun, like, daily exercise. Do you remember the challenge they gave in the video? To start a chain with the word food.
I do. What kind of word journey did that take you on?
Okay. So for me, food immediately made me think of cooking. Then I jumped to recipes, which led to online videos. And then somehow I ended up thinking about cats watching videos on the internet.
That's awesome. That's great. You see, like how those connections, they just start to unfold naturally, and you're doing it all in English without even like stressing about grammar rules or anything.
Yeah, it's like a game.
Yeah.
And the more you play, the stronger those pathways
Yeah.
become. What I find really interesting is this idea that it's based on like real cognitive science. You mentioned spreading activation earlier. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah. So, our brains are these incredibly complex networks, right? And when you think of a word, it's not just a single point in your mind. It actually triggers this whole chain reaction, activating all these related concepts and memories. And so with these thought chains, you're essentially priming your brain to activate those English-related networks more and more frequently.
Oh, okay. So the more we practice this, the easier it becomes for our brains to like jump to English mode, even in like everyday situations.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're training your brain to think in English, not just translate into it.
Okay. I like that. Let's talk about English autopilot now. This one I think is crucial, especially for those moments when you're in a conversation and your mind just suddenly goes blank.
Oh, yeah. Conversation fright.
Yeah.
Happens all the time. But the good news is we can totally prepare for it. The video talked about having those ready-to-go phrases like, that's interesting, or let me think about it.
Yeah, and those are great starting points, but I was thinking about like those situations where I need more than just a few seconds to like gather my thoughts. What are some other phrases we could add to our like autopilot arsenal?
Hmm. That's a good question. I think phrases that politely ask for clarification could be really helpful. Things like, could you rephrase that?
Yeah.
Or, I'm not sure I understand. Could you explain it another way?
Okay, yeah.
You know?
Perfect. Because they buy you time without interrupting the flow of the conversation.
Right.
And I think it's also important to have phrases for expressing agreement or disagreement, like, I totally agree, or I see your point, but.
Absolutely. It's about having a range of responses that feel natural,
Yeah. Yeah.
that allow you to actively participate in the conversation.
And what I find really encouraging about this is that it's not about memorizing a script.
Mhm.
It's about building those mental reflexes.
Exactly. It's like any skill. The more you practice it, the more automatic it becomes. You're essentially like creating these shortcuts in your brain, so you don't have to think as hard about constructing those basic responses.
I like that. Okay. Metaphors and analogies. This is where things start to get really interesting, I think. This tip, I feel like, speaks to that desire to not just speak English, but to like use it creatively, expressively.
Yeah, it's about adding those layers of meaning,
Right.
making your English more vibrant, more engaging.
We talked about comparing feeling hot to being in a sauna.
Right.
What other metaphors come to mind when you think about everyday experiences? Well, if I'm feeling overwhelmed with work, I might say I'm drowning in deadlines instead of just saying I'm busy. Or if someone gives me some great advice, I might say, that's a real eye-opener, rather than just that's helpful.
Oh, I like those. Those are really good.
Right.
Yeah.
And you see how they instantly paint this more vivid picture in the listener's mind.
And I think what's fascinating is that metaphors actually tap into how our brains naturally process information. We're constantly like making comparisons, making connections.
Right.
It's how we make sense of the world.
So using metaphors in English is not just about being like poetic or fancy.
Right.
It's actually helping us to think more naturally in the language.
Exactly. By thinking metaphorically, you're moving beyond those direct translations,
Yeah.
and you're tapping into a deeper understanding of the language.
Yeah.
It's about finding those equivalences in meaning and feeling, even if the words themselves are different.
Oh, that's so interesting. It's about seeing the connections between ideas,
Right.
not just the individual words.
Exactly.
So I guess the challenge here is to start noticing those metaphors in your own language.
Right.
And see how you can find similar expressions in English.
And don't be afraid to experiment.
Right.
Sometimes the most unexpected metaphors can be the most effective. It's about finding your own voice in English.
I love that. Now let's dive into the kind of more introspective side of things with reframe your emotions. I have to admit, when I first heard about this one, I was like, huh. But the more I think about it, the more it makes sense.
It is a little bit of a different approach,
Yeah.
but I think it's really about acknowledging that powerful link between language and our emotional experience.
Yeah.
We often talk about language learning as this very cognitive process,
Mm.
but our emotions play such a huge role.
Yeah. And the video gave that example of saying, I'm frustrated because I can't find my keys, instead of just feeling that frustration internally.
Right.
What other examples can you think of for using this technique in daily life?
Well, imagine you just aced a really difficult exam.
Okay.
Instead of just feeling happy, you could say, I'm so proud of myself for passing that exam.
Yeah.
Right? Or if you're feeling anxious about a presentation, you could say, I'm feeling a bit nervous, but I'm also excited for the opportunity to share my ideas.
So it's about consciously linking those feelings to the English language.
Right. Like you're giving those emotions a voice
Yeah.
in English, making them more real, more tangible.
And I think this ties in so well with the idea of affirmations.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Which we touched on earlier.
Right, right. Repeating those positive statements in English.
Yeah.
Like, I'm confident in my English skills.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not only boosts your mood, but it can also help rewire your brain to think more positively about using the language.
It's like giving yourself a pep talk. But in English, I love how these techniques are not just about learning grammar and vocabulary. They're about changing your whole relationship with the language.
Yeah. It's about making English a part of your inner world.
Yeah.
Not just something external that you're trying to master.
Totally. Okay. For the last tip in this section, let's revisit simulate English-only situations. This one, I think, is all about taking action, stepping outside of your comfort zone, even if it's just in your mind.
Yeah. It's about creating those immersive experiences, even if you can't physically be in an English-speaking environment.
The video talked about imagining everyday scenarios like ordering food, explaining your job. What other types of situations could we mentally rehearse?
Well, think about those times when you might need to, problem solve in English.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what if you miss your flight or lose your wallet while traveling?
Uh-oh.
Right. How would you explain the situation and ask for help?
Yeah, that's a good one. And it highlights the importance of not just practicing, the happy path conversations,
Right.
but also those, unexpected scenarios that can totally throw you off guard.
Exactly. Exactly. It's about building that mental agility and confidence
Yeah.
to handle whatever comes your way. And the beauty of it is you can practice these situations anywhere, anytime.
Right.
Just close your eyes and imagine yourself in that scenario.
And they had that great suggestion of using, online videos as prompts, pause a video and ask yourself, what would I say or do in this situation? It turns passive watching into, an active learning experience.
It does. It's about making the most of those little moments throughout your day to engage with English in a meaningful way.
Okay. So we've really unpacked a lot of powerful techniques in this section.
We have.
From rewiring our brains with word associations to tapping into our emotions to mentally rehearsing real-life situations. It's like a complete workout routine for our English brains.
It is. It is. And just like with any workout, consistency is key. The more you practice these techniques, the stronger and more fluent your English will become.
And I think the most important takeaway is that it doesn't have to be a chore.
It shouldn't be.
It can be, a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Language learning should be an enjoyable journey of discovery.
Well said, well said. We'll be back to wrap up our deep dive into building your English brain and leave you with some final thoughts to ponder. Stay tuned.
Oh.
All right, so we're back. And, we've been talking about all these cool ways to, build that English brain.
We have. It's been a lot of fun.
Right. It's been awesome.
Yeah.
And I always like to leave our listeners with, something to think about, you know?
Like
A little challenge to take away from our deep dive today.
Okay, what do you got?
Well, we were talking about English autopilot earlier, those ready-to-go voices. That can help you navigate conversations.
Right. Just roll off the tongue.
Yeah, more smoothly.
Yeah.
And it got me thinking about, the phrases that we use almost automatically in our own native languages.
Oh, yeah. Without even thinking.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And I thought, what if we could tap into those existing language patterns and see if we can create English equivalents.
I like that. It's like bridging the gap between your native language and English.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
yeah.
So think about like those everyday expressions, the things you say without even thinking.
Mm,
Maybe it's a polite way to disagree or a funny saying that you use with your friends.
right, right. Those little quirks.
Yeah, exactly. And can you find a way to express those same ideas naturally in English?
I love it. So you're basically like hacking your own brain,
Yeah.
using those ingrained patterns to your advantage.
It's like building a secret passageway
I love it.
between the two languages.
Yeah.
So for everyone listening, I challenge you to identify 3 phrases from your native language that you use all the time,
Hmm.
and then see if you can find like natural, authentic English equivalents
Hmm.
that you can start using in your conversations.
I love this challenge.
Yeah.
Because it emphasizes that language learning, it's a personal journey.
Oh, yeah.
You can draw on your own unique background, your own experiences.
Absolutely. It's about finding your own voice in English, not just mimicking
Yeah.
what you hear in textbooks or, videos.
Totally.
Yeah. Well, I think that's about it for our deep dive today. We've explored some really powerful techniques, all based on that idea of rewiring your brain to think in English more naturally. And I think the most important takeaway is that it's a process, not a destination.
Yes.
It's about embracing those little moments of learning. Those daily exercises that can gradually shift how you think and feel about English. And remember, it should be fun.
It absolutely should be. When you enjoy the process, learning becomes an adventure, not a chore.
So well said. So keep experimenting, keep playing with the language, and keep challenging yourself to think in English. You might be surprised by what your brain is capable of.
I agree. Until next time, happy Englishing, everyone.
Bye.